most organizations really struggle to enable the people that are doing the work in their organization to understand where they're going and what they're trying to achieve. I remember working with an organization in the US. This is just an example. Probably about 80% of the, no, it must be more, like 90%. This is anecdotal evidence from me consulting with organizations. Probably 90% plus of organizations, teams, groups that I work with have no idea what value means to their business. They have no idea what the strategic direction of their organization is, and they have no idea what the current goal is for their organization. Can you imagine that? You're trying to do work, trying to decide what to build, trying to decide what direction to go, and you've no idea what that direction is. That's like being dropped in a field in the middle of nowhere and told to get to the nearest village, and you have no idea what direction that village is. You're just going to have to come up with a search pattern, and you're going to have to go try and search. Whereas what you really need is a map and a compass. And that's what those things are, right? That is what this idea of vision and value is for an organization. It's the map and the compass. Where are we going? How are we going to get there? Are we going in the right direction? How do we measure how we're going in the right direction? That's why I talk about evidence-based management, right? How do we measure we're being more successful than before we made that decision? That's why I talk about hypothesis-driven engineering practices. How do we ensure that the ideas that we have actually have a valid story to them, right? Are we making the difference that we thought we were going to make with the investment we thought we were going to do? And that's why it's so important for senior management and leaders to grow their product management and product ownership capabilities in their organization, to understand how important that story is for organizations to have, not just to have a goal and a vision, right? But for it to be articulated in a way that every single person in your organization understands what that goal and what that vision is, and how the work they do every day contributes to it. Because if the work they do every day doesn't contribute to what it is your business is trying to achieve, then you probably shouldn't be doing it, right? If we don't know what direction we're going, how do we know whether even the big things that we're working on are supporting that goal and vision that we're trying to achieve? You need to have a North Star. You need to understand, as a business, what are you trying to achieve, and be able to communicate that to everybody in your organization in a way that makes sense to them. It doesn't matter if it makes sense to you, right? It has to make sense to them, because they're the ones who are doing the work. They're the ones who are making the decisions. Every person in your organization is making lots of little micro decisions every day within the context of whatever it is they've been hired to do, right? So software engineers are making engineering decisions. Architects are making architectural decisions. Project managers are making project decisions. Delivery managers are making delivery decisions every single day. They're not going to go ask you whether they're making the right decision or not. In order for them to be able to understand what it is that, whether their decision's a good decision or not, right? Let's say they just have two options. You never have two options. You have like 50 options, but let's say you've got two options. And depending on the future, one is right and one is wrong. Maybe they're both right, but one could be right, one could be wrong. We don't know yet. Depends on the future. But if I am making that decision and I understand more about the context, I understand more about the impact that this choice is going to make on the future, I can perhaps make a better choice. If I don't understand, I'm just going to randomly pick whichever one's my favorite, right? Because that's what people do. What do I think, based on the limited knowledge I have, is the best thing I can do? So if you look at something like David Marquette's "Turn the Ship Around," right? It talks about intent-based leadership. What do you intend as a business? How do you communicate that? Does everybody understand your intent? Because if they don't understand your intent, they're going to make bad decisions. You want them to make good decisions, because they're going to make the decisions. Because in order for you to make the decisions, you have to understand everything that they understand. And you're hiring incredibly technical people these days, right? In the old days of big textile factories, management could make better decisions than the people on the shop floor, because the people on the shop floor were a largely uneducated workforce, and you could maybe talk. Even the four people foremans were probably not highly educated. They had anecdotal knowledge, right? They didn't understand the theory. They just understood the mechanisms of what's happening on the floor. You needed to go up to management levels to get people to understand what it is we're actually trying to achieve as the business. What's the thing? So they didn't make any of the decisions at the bottom, but they weren't doing highly technical work that required lots of decisions. When you're doing simple things, when you're doing, let's say when you're doing complicated things, you can document them into simpleness. Right, that's probably a good way. It's a terrible way to describe it, but anyway, you can take a complicated thing, you can write a bunch of documentation, create a bunch of rules, create a bunch of if this happens, then this happens, and you can provide standard operating procedures, right? SOP. You can provide those for people, and they can just follow them, and we're going to have good outcomes, right? Because by following that standard operating procedure, we're going to have the same outcomes every time. But in the world of complexity, when we are dealing with surprise and surprises can be good or bad, surprises and opportunities, right? Those vary too much, and we can't create a standard operating procedure, because we will perhaps not be able to maximize the value that we create, because we're just following the standard operating procedure. And lots of big organizations definitely fall into that trap of they have a SOP for everything. This is how we do things here. This is our bureaucracy, our red tape, our whatever you call it locally. And it inhibits the ability of the people in your organization to make better decisions than the person who decided on the standard operating procedure, which may have been 10 years ago in a different market, in a different part of the business, for a different context. And now it's applied to everybody and everything equally across the organization. And in some cases, it's a good decision. And in other cases, it's a really bad decision. We want to make more right decisions and less wrong decisions. And that means everybody in your organization has to understand what it is you're trying to achieve. And in order for them to do that, you as the business, you as leaders and management within that business need to grow your understanding of how you communicate and engage with everybody in your organization to ensure that they understand what you're trying to achieve and what direction they're going. And that means you can't just go install OKRs and have everything be perfect. You can't just write something in your vision statement and have everybody just follow it. They need to understand. Understanding is not a Boolean proposition. It's not something that you can standard operating bureaucrat your way into. It needs to be something that is personal, that is based on empathy, that is based on engagement with people. And for that, that's why we have a product owner. That's why we have product ownership capabilities. And in order to maximize the value that your organization creates, you're going to have to help everybody understand what it is you're trying to achieve.